Ghost of Yotei is a beautiful sequel that, from a gameplay perspective, improves on Ghost of Tsushima in practically every way. However, there is a single aspect to this game that left me wanting: the narrative. Atsu's story did not compel me as much as Jin's did, and having sat on Yotei's story for a bit, I am ready to dissect why. First off, it's important to acknowledge that the two games are trying to tell very different stories. Jin's tale is one of a man who knew exactly what he was and lost everything to save his people. Atsu's tale is pretty much the opposite, one of a wild wanderer who didn't know who she was but found herself. One becomes the ghost, the other starts off as the Onryo but puts her to rest by the end. So in that way, a direct comparison isn't fair, but still, there's a very significant element to Jin's character arc that was practically absent in Atsu's: doubt. Doubt is extremely important in any story because without doubt, there is no struggle, and without struggle, there is no growth or change. Jin doubted everything. Every dishonorable action he took in Act 1 was followed by an extended flashback sequence of Shimura condemning him for doing that very thing. This doubt, this internal struggle between the way of the samurai and the way of the ghost are central to the drama of the game, and when Jin finally makes the choice, it's heartbreaking, because even though his uncle was ready to sacrifice countless warriors, Jin's methods were far from humane too. His use of poison not only made his allies terrified of him, but made Khotun Khan turn it against him, and if Jin didn't stop him, he would have used it as a weapon to take over the mainland. Atsu, sadly, has barely any reason to doubt what she's doing. Her revenge quest is entirely righteous. The Yotei 6 undoubtedly deserved what was coming, but even on top of that, practically every action Atsu takes in this game is to the benefit of all of Ezo. Despite being a person of questionable occupation in a lawless land where everyone does whatever it takes to survive, Atsu isn't given any reason to sacrifice her morals to achieve her revenge. The Yotei 6 are an entirely evil, irredeemable bunch with armies of equally despicable minions who murder, pillage, and endanger the innocents. Every bounty Atsu takes, or that we even see in the game, are either of murderous psychopaths or Saito thugs. This, of course, is all by design. Regardless of how selfish Atsu's quest is, every action she takes makes Ezo a safer, better place. She makes friends and allies pretty easily. Despite being a loner, the people have no reason to fear or hate the Onryo, and her goal is not only justified, it's noble. All of those choices were made to emphasize the main theme of Ghost of Yotei, that even someone who lost everything can find community and peace. But with that arises an issue. Since Atsu's impact is so entirely positive, it's very hard to make her arc compelling, because without that doubt or that struggle, the dramatic character-changing moments in this game don't hit as hard. Throughout Yotei, the primary character flaw that Atsu displays is that she loses herself when in presence of a member of the Yotei 6. Fair enough, but the issue is that we're barely ever shown the negative consequences of this. Jubei claims that it's bad and dangerous, but nothing in the game really emphasizes this. Atsu kills member after member, making regions of Ezo safer and building connections while losing nothing. So at the end of Act 2, or Chapter 2 as it's called here, when Atsu is meant to make the critical choice to either help Jubei protect Kiku or kill the dragon, the intended weight of that moment is simply not present. Atsu supposedly makes the selfish choice here, but it was honestly Jubei who was being selfish here. The dragon isn't just someone. He is a general of Saito's army that the Matsumaya are actively in a war with. His death should be a tactical priority and a major victory over Saito, so this supposed difficult choice Atsu is meant to make feels a little fabricated. And even when Jubei and Oyuki are kidnapped, Atsu can't entirely blame herself because this whole plan was the Matsumaya's idea. And afterwards, Atsu actually manages to save them both, so this crucial all is lost moment doesn't hit nearly as much as it's meant to. Not to keep comparing the two games, but the equivalent of this choice is this moment. Jin losing himself to poison the Mongols, refusing to be Shimura's son and proclaiming himself as the ghost, followed by his daring escape and his horse's death, and the immediate realization that the Mongols are now using Wolfsbane against him and his people. This sequence of events is the dramatic highlight of the game that elevated Ghost of Tsushima above a simple story of a warrior protecting his home. And although Yotei's story is a story of rebuilding, connection, and peace, the realization that Atsu should fight to protect others and not out of personal vendetta needed to carry similar emotional weight to be similarly effective. I think there could have been ways to create a little more complexity in Atsu's story and make her and the player doubt her actions more. That would in turn make her transformation more satisfying. For example, as the game would go along and more Yotei 6 members would die, a more aggressive resistance by Saito would have been powerful, punishing Atsu and anyone she conspires with, putting up bounties on members of the wolf pack, forcing Atsu to go save her friends who were in danger because of their affiliation to the Onryo, adding to the fear and doubt. There is a dynamic event where the Shadow Inn is taken over, which is really cool, but it lasts 5 minutes and sadly nothing of real consequence comes to it. Creating more complexity regarding Atsu's war against Saito would have been helpful as well. Throughout the game, we see how influential Saito's ideas are, allowing even peasants to become samurai. The Saito outlaws Atsu encounters are exclusively awful, but creating more instances where more regular, sane people bring up their perspective that Saito gives them the status, quality of life, and purpose they otherwise wouldn't have could add dimension to the ongoing conflict and give Atsu more reason to doubt whether she should be doing what she's doing. Similarly, as we see throughout early game, the Matsumai are not necessarily the noble, incredible warriors either, and throughout the game, several characters bring up this point, but by chapter 2, when Atsu reunites with Jubei proper, the two sides of the conflict become practically black and white, which nullifies any doubt Atsu could possibly have about her actions. Lastly, I believe Jubei's death would have been more effective if it was done during the rescue, as it would have actually given much more weight to Atsu's choice to kill the dragon, because, to be honest, the way he died in the game, just showing up looking like this, thinking he can take on Saito and risking his life when he has a daughter, come on, bro. Of course, Sucker Punch didn't have the hindsight of the complete product when making these decisions, because there's a million things to keep track of when making a game of the scale, and it's understandable why things were done this way. It was clearly very important to separate the owner from the ghost, and creating similar fears and doubts risked making the two protagonists too similar in certain aspects. It's also important to keep in mind that Ghost of Yotei is much less linear, and so much of the game can be experienced in whatever order the player wants, which resulted in Atsu being a more static character, but as a result, the emotional impact of her arc is diminished, though perhaps that was by design. In Ghost of Tsushima, it feels like the world is meant to support the character, while in Ghost of Yotei, the character exists to let us experience the world. Ezo is the clear star of the show this time around, and it's evident that building all the world activities and vignettes that make it an interesting, breathing, living place took as much effort as the main story. So this more steady line of emotion in Atsu's journey is understandable compared to the extreme highs and lows of Jin's, because the game itself moves at a much calmer, steadier pace that encourages you to just exist in this world. It makes for a better game, but also an inferior story. It's simply where the devs' priorities lied this time around. Thank you for watching this. I also want to tell you that I have memberships, because how else would you know? Check out the perks if you're interested, and also do all the other typical YouTube things. You can hype a video now. I have no idea what it does, but there you go. Okay, bye. May the force be with you.